Right, so today I have the real pleasure of meeting with Roberta Grimes. Thank you so much for coming to join me in today's podcast. I'm so delighted to have you as my guest. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, we got so much to cover today, Roberta. I am so passionate as well about afterlife and what happens when you pass over, and spirituality, and all the work and the mission that you are on. Um, so, Roberta, would you please tell me a little bit about yourself? Who are you?
Well, when I was 8 years old, I had an experience of light, and I had to know where that light had come from. So it started me on a voyage. Ever since, I've done this research. And anyone who asks the questions gets the answers. I want people to know that you can do the research and you can find the truth. And
Yeah.
that's why I've been doing this work for 50 years. And
Wow.
once I had the truth, I had to teach it. So when I realized I knew the truth, I began to teach it, and I've done that ever since.
And how was it like an 8-year-old? Obviously, you're very young when you're 8 years old, to receive that message. Did you get terrified, or how did you feel?
Well, I thought it was convenient. If you forget there's a God, they remind you, and I just went back to sleep.
Wow.
Because what happened was I woke up in the middle of the night and knew there was no God, and I was afraid. And so there was this bright light, and a voice said, that basically that there was a God indeed, and go back to sleep. And so I did. And I thought it was handy that if you forget there's a God, they will remind you. I didn't know that wasn't normal, but it's not normal. Most people don't have that experience. And so it took me 40 years to find someone else who had had that experience, and then it was my own mother. And then I realized then that I had to teach all of this. But I did the research. I've done the teaching ever since.
Wow. So it actually happened to your mother as well. Very,
Yes, but
very unique.
it's happened to other people too. It's in the Bible. Moses with his burning bush, same experience.
Mm.
The apostle Saul before he became Paul, on the road to Damascus.
Yeah.
If you recall, he saw a light,
Mm-hmm.
and the voice of Jesus said, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And knocked him over, and he was blind for a while because he was not a small child, and he was shocked by it. I wasn't shocked. I just thought it was handy. I forgot there was a God. They reminded me, and I went back to sleep. It was quite normal for a small child. Anything's normal for a small child because
Yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. And then after that, you were obviously 8 years old. And then after that, did you have any more profound experiences? No,
no.
nothing?
But that made me know that it was okay to do the research, because there is a God. If there's a God, and you basically then have permission to do the research. Most people are afraid because they're afraid. Think about this. If you do the research and you find nothing, and you're only 25, you've got the rest of your life to live with the thought there's no God, and you're going to die and there's nothing. So you're afraid to do the research. But I was
Yeah.
never afraid because I always knew there was a God.
Mm. And talking about the research as well, obviously back in the 50s and 60s, there weren't any research done on this topic, afterlife. And then obviously entering into the 70s and 80s, a lot of people started publishing different.
Yes.
And you took obviously part of that. And what were sort of the first experiences you came across with afterlife? What was the most profound insight?
Most people don't know that there was a heyday of great experiences received in the late 19th, early 20th centuries through deep trance mediums. And those books, when I got out of college, which was the end of the 60s, you could find those books in used bookstores. for a few pennies, you could buy these books. And I just started doing that when I got out of college. And for about 2 years, I was obsessively reading these experiences people had had in Southern England, in the Eastern United States, in New York, and in Boston. And by the end of 2 years of reading hundreds of these experiences received through deep trance mediums, I basically said, okay, I give up. It's real. It had to be real.
Yeah.
Because in all those experiences, it was always this, even though I'd never found a duplication in all those hundreds of experiences, it was always the same process, the same places, the same, kinds of things happening, the same, that the way they dressed, the kinds of, everything was the same. It was like reading hundreds of communications from people who had been to Fiji. It all been to the same place. And it was impossible. And nobody had weird things to talk about. No little blue men, nothing weird. It was all real.
Yeah, and this unconditional real, love, and that
the whole thing. Yes.
I agree with you. Yeah.
So yes, it was real.
And that is the astral room. Before we talk about the silver cord.
The silver cord is in the Bible. Yes, that term comes, actually it's a biblical term. It comes from the Old Testament.
But now, before you die, if you want to talk me through the process of death, what is death?
Well, it depends. If people are most of us, when we plan our lives, we plan 2 or 3 exit points. One, early in life, one in midlife, and one in old age. And if you're going through a natural planned death, there's a process. As you can imagine, there would be a process. And if you're going through that process, in the last few days, even if, most people, my first book on this topic was called The Fun of Dying. And so many people have come up to me when I was giving speeches and said, dying is not fun. How could you write a book like that? Well, it is. In the last couple of days before a natural planned death, it's actually quite a lot of fun. One of the things that happens is in the upper corners of the room, you see people you thought you'd never see again. Your mom and, your dad, your dog from when you were 10 years old who died, but way back then. And all these people, all these pets that you thought you'd never see again. They appear in the upper corners of the room, and they're young and they're happy, and they start talking to you in your mind, and you stop talking to the people around the bed. Because when you see your deathbed visitors, which is what we call them, you're going to be fine because they're fine. That's the start of a wonderful day or 2-day process of actually going home, because that's what it really is. And the energy body, which is leaving, which is who you really are, this outer body, which is, let's say if you're dying at 87, you don't really want this body anyway. It's pretty awful by now. It's
pretty
all
done. Yeah.
It doesn't look like you, my dear, anymore. It really looks pretty
That's
old.
Right.
And you're gonna leave it behind. So the inner body just gathers its energy, and I think of it as unvelcroing. It people who are alive, or rather aware during this process, say it's like little threads are breaking in your fingers and going up your arms and into your torso. And these threads are breaking. It doesn't hurt, but it feels funny. And your energy body actually leaves through your chest, usually, sometimes through your head. And people who are sensitives sitting at your bedside often are able to see that little sort of cloud leave your body and gather above your body and then disappear. But it isn't disappearing. Instead, it's rising in vibration and going above the vibration that people can see who are around your deathbed. It gathers into the shape of a person, of a naked person. You realize you don't have clothes. You think clothes. You think, clothes. And immediately you have clothes on. And around your deathbed are all these people you thought you'd never see again. It's the best reunion you can imagine. But don't try at that point. Here's word to the wise. Don't try to contact the people around the bed, because your energy cord is about to break. And when it does, the body will die. And the people around the bed are going to say, oh my goodness, feel for a pulse. And when they do, you're going to want to say, hey, Ma, or hey, your great granddaughter, or whoever's around the bed, I'm fine. When you do, you lower your vibration. And when you do that, you may lose your ability to see the people who have come for you. That's how they make ghosts. You don't want to be a ghost. Instead, Instead, word to the wise, go with the people who have come for you. Your vibration rises rapidly, and right in the same place where you are now, a new world opens up.
And what vibration, sorry to interrupt you, but what vibration are we talking about? Are we talking about third, fourth, and fifth vibration? Which one is it when you're passing over?
The easiest way to think about this is to think about all the TV channels that are in the room with you right now. If you had a television, you could probably pick up hundreds of channels right in the room where you are right now. Channel 3, 4, 5, 7, up through channel 20 some odd, 30 some odd. The same is true of all the different, realities that are in that same room. And the lowest probably is the material one where you are right now. When you transition, all that happens is your mind tunes to a slightly higher vibration. Material vibration is the lowest, or one of the very lowest. And you and those who have come for you will together tune to a slightly higher vibration. And there they will pick up a whole new reality right in the same place. It feels like going through a bit of a fog. And then when your mind clears on a higher vibration, we think of it as level 3, which is the entrance level to the afterlife. That's where almost everybody enters the afterlife. It's that simple. It's really that simple. It's amazingly simple.
Wow. And right now we have a massive awakening happening across the globe. A lot of people are waking up and going through a healing journey, and also getting more in touch with their intuition and the spiritual gifts.
Yes.
Myself included. I've always been very spiritual, but I can certainly sense that it's been enhanced. My gifts has been enhanced as I've been walking.
Yes. The veil is thinning so much. Yes.
And it's amazing how much, when you raise your vibration yourself, how much easier it is to hear your guides, your family members and your ancestors. Quite amazing.
It really is. It really is. But the important time, it really is a crucial time to listen to those who have come for you, is when you are transitioning, because the veil is very thin for you right at that moment. And at the same time, you're worried about the people around your bed, because they don't understand what you do, which is that life really is eternal. And you are in very close touch with the people who have come for you. You can help them once you have completed your transition, but you can't help them. They can't even see you when you have left your body. So that's the crucial time. The crucial time is right when the people who have come for you are saying, come with us. Their bodies, their minds are tuned to your mind. They are taking you with them. So make sure you go with them then. That's a very key point that everybody listening to us has to pay attention to. Go with them. All your minds are rising very rapidly in vibration to make sure you're all tuned to level 3 and to the entrance to the afterlife. Now, another thing, I mean, if everyone listening to us is in Sweden or surrounding countries, you'll be going to the afterlife entrance point for those countries. And that's where you're going to all want to be, because that's what's comfortable and familiar for those people. That's very important.
So it's actually geographic as well. I had no idea about that.
It's very geographic. Yes.
Really? Wow. Okay.
People who die in China will see pagodas. It's very, very geographic as to the place on the earth where you transition. The people that when I was reading all of those when I was first learning about all of this and reading all those books that had been received at that point 50, 60 years before I read the books, they all talked about, there were two places they talked about. One was the entrance point for people who had died in southern England, and the other was the entrance point for people who had died in the eastern United States. And the people who died in the eastern United States were seeing beautiful entrance gardens, but they all had Rocky Mountains beyond them, and with foothills. And those who had died in southern England saw these Victorian gardens, different, very, very local to the people who were dying right in that area.
Very, very interesting. And if we talk about, if you become stuck, then you literally turn into a ghost, right? If you don't.
Well, it's more that you're stuck, period. What people do who end up being unable to follow their deathbed visitors. And by the way, I thought this was a rare phenomenon. It's not. It's quite common. People who don't follow their deathbed visitors will end up basically just seeing around them what it had looked like at the time of their death. Their mind constructs the same reality that was around them at the time of their death, and they just start going through a routine that is the routine that they would have gone through, and they repeat that same routine over and over, sometimes for centuries.
And how do they get restuck? I mean, how do you release these people?
They have to be rescued. And there's rescue work being done all the time.
From our side or from the other side?
Usually it's a combination from our side and from the other side as well. In all of my explorations, I've done some rescue work, and it's quite amazing to do.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to do.
Is that when you get like some energy stuck in a house, for instance, and you have to go into house clearings and
some of it's house clearings, but it's not, I mean, who cares about the house? I care about the people. The people who've been stuck, and some of them for a very long time. I mean, I've read so many cases, and I was part of a house clearing of a woman who had been stuck in the early 1800s, and she was still working on a spinning wheel, one of those. She was spinning wool, and I helped her to see a little boy who was the one I was told to help her to see. She could see me because I was a living person. I was trailing a silver cord, and I introduced her to a little boy with me who was really an advanced being, and the advanced being took her to see a group of, or to be greeted by a group of people who were standing on a street corner, who were actually her children, all of whom had also transitioned. And they greeted her, and at last she completed her transition. It was quite a beautiful thing to watch.
Wow. I actually have a friend of mine, she's a medium, and she sees people from the 1800, 1900 centuries on the streets, souls that are stuck.
Yeah.
And
apparently there are a lot of them. I didn't know this.
They're everywhere.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. We all have soul contracts, right? Before coming into this life is divinely orchestrated. We have our missions. We are here to grow. We're here to learn.
We have a plan for our lives. Things that we are trying to learn. The things that we are trying to raise our vibration. So that because once we get to the upper part of the fifth level in terms of our own vibration, we can continue to learn and grow there. We don't have to keep coming back here, and which is a very important, very good thing.
And would you saying that, is that because Earth is a very dense energy, it's a very difficult place to be at because it's so challenging, it's a lot of fear, perhaps more fear than other planets out there?
Yes, this is said to be one of the hardest, but one of the most productive places to grow spiritually that there is.
I know Dolores Cannon talked a lot about this in the 60s, and that everyone that's on this planet are heroes doing a massive mission.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
You walk into some canteen, from when it's like one of the Star Wars canteens, and you say, "Well, I'm from Earth." They'll all step aside because it's a tough place to learn, but you can learn a lot. You just have to be open to learning and growing.
Yeah.
And taking your lessons seriously. It's very, very, very tough, but very productive to learn here.
What's really helped me though along the journey is to realize that I am here to learn and grow, and everything just is. There is no judgment whatsoever. Everyone is on their life path and on their journeys.
As long as you are not judgmental, as long as you always forgive and always love. And that can be tough sometimes because there are, not everyone is a good person. A lot of people are.
Betrayal.
There's a lot of stuff to forgive that happens. A lot of people who cross your path do things that you don't want to forgive. And one of the hardest things to do in this life is to forgive, but you've got to forgive every single time. Jesus said that. He said, people said, well, how many times do I have to forgive when people do things up to 7 times? And he said, no, up to 70 times, 7 times, every single time.
Yeah, and that is also the path to freedom. Like Jesus is saying that heaven resides inside. And
yes,
I know that. I have experienced that with my healing journey. It's not constant because we're human beings, but at times I get to experience the heaven, and it's so peaceful and harmonious, and it's amazing. And I never thought that would be possible. I heard people have the expression years ago, but I never thought I would experience that myself.
Yes, and once you learn to forgive, no matter what happens, and no matter who does it, and no matter how many times you have freed yourself, you have really learned that lesson. It's very, very, very freeing.
Yes, right. The path to freedom. And you can live with that uncertainty. You don't need to know what's coming. I mean, you trust yourself. It's just really hard to explain, but it's such a freedom of letting go and just having trust in the universe.
That's right. Yes, it's just absolutely liberating. But no one said it was supposed to be easy. It's not easy, but it is worthwhile.
And talk about that. We need to experience contrast, right, in life. So we need to have, everything is contrast, black and white. So we need to get to know what we don't want in order to understand what we do need and want.
Mm-hmm.
So I see my life at this point up to pretty much about to where I am now. I have had a massive amounts of challenges and struggles and so much pain. It's unbelievable. But I definitely know what I don't want in my life anymore.
That's a big step. That's a big step. That's good.
But I think with that as well, you had to be very humble, and it is a very humbling process as well. Going through life and its tribulations and in the whole full journey. But now that the research is coming out and with your work as well, the afterlife, that the life is eternal, we should really embrace our life here and enjoy it, right, as much as we can.
To me, it makes all the difference knowing for certain that your life is eternal. It makes all the difference.
In what ways?
I mean, you live forever. You cannot die. To me, that's everything. That is everything.
Yeah. Never-ending journey of growing.
That's right.
Yeah. Do you know anything about the afterlife, about different planets or different parallel universes, or have you got any insight into that?
Yeah. Well, but the important thing about the afterlife is that you really are in charge of your own afterlife. I mean, you don't. People tend to worry that your afterlife is going to be, and in fact, there are people who teach all kinds of awful details that you're going to go through this and go through that, and it's just not true. You're very empowered in your own afterlife. You are going to see your mom, you're going to see all your loved ones, and there is no time there. That makes all the difference in the world. So you get to spend an infinity doing whatever you want to do. And if you're going to get to spend an infinity of time doing whatever you want to do, how bad could that be? I ask you.
And I lost my mom when I was 12. I was very young. But about 2 years after her death, I could actually smell her, feel her. I could feel when she touched me. It was amazing. And I could smell her being
Smell,
in the room.
especially, is within the first 2 years after people die, is a very, very, very common sign. Yep.
And she has helped me so much with so many great things in my life. And I always have that. And even with my children now, she's very much with my children. My children never got to meet her, but they also have an interaction with her, especially my oldest son have a conversation with her, and they have a very good connection, which is really lovely. It's mind-blowing. And he describes what she looks like. I mean, she obviously has her appearance when she was at her best in her 30s. I mean, she was quite young when she passed, and then he describes her personality, different words she used to say. It's very, very true to me, because I have.
Isn't that beautiful? So great.
And do you think with the soul contracts that we all sign a contract and we wait till everyone has passed over, it's sort of like they are there to guiding you throughout life and helping you and giving you that unconditional love and that support?
Yes. One of the things people worry about is that the people who have gone ahead are already going to have reincarnated before you get there, and that just doesn't happen. People wait and they gather in family groups so that the people that you loved will be there waiting for you, and there'll be great reunions before people reincarnate. It just doesn't happen that quickly.
Can I tell you about a personal thing here that I'd like to share with you as well? I work with a medium coach. I've been working with her for years, and I love this. And she told me my grandmother came through very early on when we started working together and I had my session. And she mentions like a dog. You will have a dog like with quite a bit of hair, a golden dog. Did she used to have a dog? And I said, no, she never had a dog. And then after the pandemic, we actually bought a Cocker Spaniel who is exactly what she described. And people in my family say it is my grandmother because she walks like my grandmother and she looks like my grandmother.
The dog?
And yes. Very, very weird.
It is weird.
Can an animal incarnate can a human being incarnate as an animal to support you and give you the love whilst you are on planet Earth, to assist you?
I hesitate to say it can't happen. I'm more confident about saying it doesn't happen. But it's conceivable that an animal could be influenced by a person, so that the entity that is the animal could be influenced by a person's spirit. That's more likely.
Yeah.
That's more likely.
Yeah, I was just wondering. I just want to hear your viewpoint on that, because I find it very, very, very odd that she
Yeah.
mentioned that about my grandmother, because she never had a dog in her entire life, and then ended up having exactly the same description as the dog we.
But for a human being to plan a lifetime as a dog, that doesn't happen. I've never heard of it happening. I know,
Mhm.
you know, never going to say never, but if I've never heard of it happening. But for them to influence for there to be a sort of an understanding between an animal and a human, that the animal will do certain things under the influence of the human.
Yes,
That
like a guidance.
happens. That
Mhm.
happens.
Ah, right. So that is quite common, is it?
It's pretty
Oh,
common.
yeah. Okay. And you have also, Roberta, you've also worked a lot with Jesus now to bring out the message that Jesus wanted to bring out when he was going through his.
Yeah, and that's still
um
ongoing. I mean, we're still trying to understand, and I think he is still revealing what he wants us to do. We're still trying to understand what he wants us to do. One of the things that happened was that Jesus taught certain things, and what he taught was in the process of being revealed after his death and resurrection. And then the Roman Emperor Constantine, 300 years after his death and resurrection, took over his movement at the First Council of Nicaea in the year 325, and created a religion which was not Jesus's religion at all. It really kept nothing of what Jesus had taught except his name. And it buried his teachings in the Gospels, but the churches don't use his teachings. The things that the churches teach are not what Jesus taught. I mean, to me, this should be considered to be a scandal, but the people running the churches have for 1700 years been teaching Constantine's stuff and not Jesus's stuff. And Jesus is now in the process of taking it back. But I mean, among the things that Jesus taught, for example, was he intended to abolish religions. Well, how do you tell people that Jesus came to abolish religions when everyone believes he invented Christianity?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a disconnect there.
Yeah. And Neil Donald Walsh, I had him on here. He said this, but 4,200 something religions in the world today.
Oh yeah, it's 42,000 religions of all kinds.
42,000. Wow.
Christian variations.
Yeah.
42,000.
Wow, it's a lot.
I know. Well, that's because there are a lot of individual. One church and has its own unique version of Christianity, and there's just that one church. That's why. But I recall when I wrote The Fun of Dying, I investigated how many there were then, and it was 10,000. So it tells you how the Christian versions are proliferating. Anything that has that many different versions, it's all screwed up, almost by definition.
And Neil, he was also saying that he said that there is no such thing as the 10 commandments, right? And you have that same, you have got that same message.
Jesus abolished the 10 commandments. He does it right in the Gospels. There's so much he says in the Gospels that everybody ignores. Jesus was asked what was the most important commandment. And he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. That's the most important commandment. Love God. And then he said, the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. Then he said something that the churches never add, but he said, in that consists all the law and the prophets. Well, in his day, the law and the prophets was what we now call the whole of the Old Testament, the law and the prophets. In that consists all the law and the prophets. When he said that, what he was saying, you got a pair of scissors handy? Cut the whole of your Old Testament out of your Bible and replace it with those two commandments. Love God, love your fellow man. That's what he was saying. Nobody will take it seriously, though.
And these religions, do they have their own truth on who God is?
I mean, Jesus said God is spirit, and we must worship God in spirit and in truth. But then they paint that God on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Rome. And he's got the 10 Commandments, I think, in his arms, doesn't he? I mean, what's the point of that? It's just, nobody takes Jesus seriously. Nobody does. The things he said to the clergymen of his day should have made all of us blush. He told us, don't listen to these hypocrites. Go into your inner room, close your door, get down on your knees and talk to God. And God, who hears what is said in secret, will hear you. But does anybody do that? No.
So what do you think with the mass awakening now? We're obviously entering into more being connecting the bridge between spirit and science. Because there's so many different sides to a coin, you know, we need to have the spirit. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. It's been said hundreds and millions of times, you know, from lots and lots of people.
The problem is that science is no better. Science became a religion 100 years ago because Max Planck, he won the 1918 Nobel Prize as the father of quantum mechanics, and he said, consciousness is the basis of everything. We cannot get behind consciousness. And they would not hear it. Scientists would not hear that. They will not to this day allow consciousness to be investigated. And in fact, Max Planck was right. Without an understanding of consciousness, it's impossible for scientists really to understand anything. They're still looking for a source of consciousness inside the human brain. Believe it or not, they've spent more than $1 billion in doing it. But we know that the human genome does not code for consciousness. So how the heck is there going to be a source of consciousness inside the human brain? When the Human Genome Project, when the results of it were announced, everyone was horrified because the Human Genome Project showed that there were 24,000 genes. They expected hundreds of thousands because of the complexity of the human mind. 24,000 genes, not 100,000 genes or 200,000 genes. That's it.
Very interesting, because I think a lot of the science today that we have on you know, on what food, etc., well-being, much of the science today won't be applicable in 20 years because we're entering a new era. You know, the change is rapid.
The problem with science is that when they decided to not allow scientists to investigate consciousness outside the human brain, they basically shut down scientific research. And to this day, it is assumed the brain produces consciousness, which it cannot. I mean, it doesn't. And therefore, there has been no significant scientific development in all this time since.
Is there any research being undertaken at the moment on consciousness? Do you know any? Has there
No,
been any door openers, or is it still shut? No
it's still
research.
shut. It's still shut. The only thing they're doing is they're looking for a source of consciousness inside the human brain, which is the equivalent, precise equivalent of looking for a source of Frank Sinatra's voice inside a tube radio. Think about that.
Very profound. With the awakening that's taking place right now, how do you think the world is going to be transformed into a more loving and kind earth? How many percent of us human beings need to undergo an awakening to have a ripple effect?
10%. 10%. I don't know how it's going to happen, but that's what it will take.
And that we need that to happen, right?
Yes, we do. But the problem is that the religions can't do it, because the religions teach fear. Religions have to teach fear, because that's the only way to get people to warm the pews. Teaching love won't get people to come to church. They have to teach fear.
Is that because we have a lot of like negative entities among like people in a very low frequency, fear-based frequency? That's
Yeah, I mean, if people are not afraid, they will not come to church. With what people in the afterlife field teach, which is love, and which is the fact that everybody goes to the self-same afterlife. It doesn't matter whether you go to church or not. All you have to do is not be afraid, and your loved ones will come for you, and everybody goes to the self-same afterlife. Whether you were a Catholic, Protestant, Jew, or had no religious affiliation, same place. That's just true. Just don't be afraid, and you're going to go to the same place.
right. So, Roberta, talking about fears, what is your biggest fear, or have been your biggest fear?
I have no fears. Not since I was 8 years old.
Not a single fear?
Nope.
Amazing.
No, I'm not afraid of anything. What is there to be afraid of? The worst thing that could happen would be that I would die.
And you know what's happening then? You know, you're onto a really good place. Yeah.
I've been given work to do. I mean, every day I pray. I always pray in gratitude affirmations. Every day I say, thank you for giving me work to do. Thank you for showing me how to do it. I've prayed that prayer my whole life long. And I've been given a lot of work to do and shown how to do it. So what could be worse? What could I possibly be afraid of?
I love it. I love your mission. I love your warmth. I can feel your warmth and your compassionate, loving personality shining through here. Roberta, where do you hope we are in 10 years in the world from now?
I just want I want whatever God intends for us in 10 years to come to pass. But I also know that a lot of people are being called to this work. I hear from them. They ask me to lead them, and I just say, open your mind, open your heart, and pray the same prayer I pray, and you'll be given your work.
Have you met with your like spirit team? Have you
Oh, all the time. I'm constantly in contact with my guide.
With your guidance, yeah.
All the time.
And we all have guides, right?
Jesus, except that Jesus is in contact with so many people, and he's got so much going on that I just need more guidance from him. That's all. And I think that he's just doing so much right now. I mean, The Chosen and other things are all his work. It's like he's playing a gigantic orchestra, and you know, I'm just playing on my little instrument over here. Anytime he, I'm part of his symphony. Anytime he wants me to do something, I do it.
I love that. That's gorgeous. Amazing. Now, what do you want to say to anyone out there that feel powerless and want to take the power back? What's your advice?
You have the power. If you feel powerless, that's your own choice. You do have the power. All you have to do is say, thank you for giving me work to do. Thank you for showing me how to do it. You have the power already. You just need to tell God you're ready to exercise that power. A lot of people are afraid to tell God that they're ready, because God has a lot of work for us to do.
Just we all here on a mission, right? We all have a mission to be of service.
Yes. Just say, I'm ready. But you have to be ready to do whatever God wants you to do. That has to be what you want to do, whatever God wants you to do. That's it. And do that work with your whole heart. But there's no bad news. It's all good news. All of it. Every bit of it is good news.
What's been the most
joy of it?
Yeah, what's been the most rewarding payback for you doing this mission?
Oh, all of it has been rewarding. Every single day is rewarding. Everything about it is rewarding. Talking to you today is rewarding.
Oh.
I mean, the thing is, there's no size to a miracle. Every day is a miracle. It is all wonderful, because I know where it goes, and we already have won. It's all unfolding now. We've already won. Jesus has already come back. He's already playing his orchestra in his own way, in his own time. We've already won. He never really left. He's been working in the astral to heal all the people that Christianity has damaged in the hundreds of millions. That's where he's been all this time.
Amazing. I can't wait to see what will unfold and what will happen in the next decade
already
or two.
Happening. If you look, it's already happening. It's just beautiful.
What an exciting time to be alive. Truly
really
a blessing.
It really is a very exciting time to be alive. Well, you're part of it.
Yes,
look
I know.
You're doing
my mission, being of service. Yeah,
absolutely. Bless your heart, dear.
Oh, same to you, Roberta. Thank you so much. I had such a beautiful, heartfelt conversation with you today, and I thank you for your being so authentic and honest, and just a wonderful human being. Thank you.
I send you such a big hug from all the way across the pond.